Thomas Wood? No, absolutely not. More like Thomas Wooden Railway. This line absolutely sucked. For those who don't know, sometime in early or middle of the middle of 2017, Mattel got the genius idea of taking Thomas Wooden Railway and discontinuing it and giving it a nearly identical, in quotation marks, rebooted version of it called Thomas and Friends Wood. And there are certain reasons as to why this reboot of the toy line got absolutely smacked by fans and all, and why people were criticizing Mattel for their terrible cheapness. And may I remind you, this happened all before Big World Big Adventures, and after, I'd say, yeah, Adventures came along, which was a good replacement for the bad take and play models from 2014 to 2016, where they had the bulky magnets. And also, this came out after Trackmaster 2.0 came along, which deserves its own rant. But anyways, that's for another video. As for Thomas Wood, yeah, rightfully nearly every single fan in the entire community, and I'm not exaggerating, it got just about as much hate as Copa for the fandom. Because, Copa takes away the comments on many Thomas videos, and then Thomas Wood comes along and it just gets as much hate, if not more. So yeah, that's saying something. The thing about Thomas Wood and all is that they took the Trackmaster engines and have tons of these ugly parts where there's no paint and all, and they expose the wood underneath. It may not sound so bad, but then when I show you an image of Thomas, it's the most disgusting and ugly looking thing I think I've ever seen. Worse than Trackmaster, worse than the bad push-alongs, worse than the bulky magnets on the take-and-play models when it was starting to go downhill. This stuff is like some of the worst Thomas anything in the entire franchise since ever at the time, before Bwubba would come along inevitably. And honestly, I am shocked that it lasted as long as it did and all, and I'm so glad it's kind of been discontinued, because then it got like a remake where they kind of added the paint onto most of the engines, kind of. There are some parts like the buffers and the domes still look weird, which, by the way, all the domes are gone, and the engines feel incomplete without them. You can't just, add the piece of wood on top or something like that, kind of. Mattel, you're so gosh darn lazy. And not just that and all, but, the faces can look really, really terrible and weird at times. And the back descriptions of certain engines, like Big Bad Diesel and Asthma, to quote G.W. Oliver, those descriptions are just wrong and awful, saying that Ashima is a popular engine who's left an impact, and saying that Diesel 10 has a caring side. What bullcrap is this? Since when has Diesel 10 shown that he has a caring side? And the overall packaging isn't the worst in the world, but it looks less like something from Thomas and Friends, and more like something from Peppa Pig. And yes, that incorrect spelling was intentional there, because that's a Catty Curtis reference. Though I will admit, the wood outlines on the clouds in the background and all, that's a nice touch. I don't mind that. But then, it's not just the unpainted parts and all. Also, the bottoms and all, where there's a black base and all, that's all wood and all, and it's really, really ugly, and it's like a beige color. Ugh. And also, the rolling stock is almost all plastic now. Certain parts of certain rolling stock was plastic before, but the unpainted parts and the overall laziness of it all makes almost every single rolling stock item, that's like a freight car or whatever, or truck or something like that, plastic instead of wood where it should be wood. Scruffy doesn't actually look half bad, but some of the others, they can really definitely use some paint. And Annie and Clarabelle, the express coaches, Winston and Birdie, they were gutted like fish so you could put a figure inside and all. They look unnatural and all. You can only put one in each and all, kind of. I've seen other wood style or whatever lines that do the same thing, kind of, but it works sense in that. But gutting out so much of the coach and all in order to make place for that and all. And the people look awful too. Remember the nice little wooden railway people and all, like workers and passengers and all? They looked detailed and nice, and they had the wood outline thing kind of on the sides and stuff. It doesn't look weird and jarring like these new engines do. Or did, I should say. And also, yeah, and they're all plastic and all. They don't look like they're from Thomas and Friends. They look like they're from Little Tykes or something. And also the animals, they're all plastic with barely any paint and all. And Also, it's funny when, to quote William Miller, I think that's his name, he said, funnily enough, the best looking items are the aquarium cars, which are some of the most hated pieces of rolling stock in the entire TWR line, which is hilarious. That's very ironic. All the tender engines are incredibly shortened down. Like Spencer is only 3 wheels, Gordon is tiny, Diesel 10 is like smaller than Thomas, and Hugo is wonky looking, and his entire front part is plastic. Young Bao doesn't even have his hat on and all, and he looks really bad. And the tenders, they're just a block of wood. And they just like print the side of the tender onto the sides of the block of wood, kind of. And the backs of the engines aren't painted. It's just a mess. It's so horrible and so cheap. They don't even look like engines and all. And the engines are incredibly blocky, like Emily and Steven. They're so blocky looking. It's so unbelievably cheap and nasty, and I hate it. And also, this goes along with the Diesel 10 caring side thing. For some reason, they make every single Diesel, the Diesel, the character, smiling for some reason. Instead of, the grumpy look that he's had in the past, like the one that I have. What else? Oh, yeah, the track master. No, I can't say it right. The track as well, they connect differently and all. They're no longer the little stubs and in pieces, kind of, and sometimes they wouldn't align and all. But that allows you to revamp and rework certain things in order to make it work and all. It gets your mind thinking. Unlike these newer ones where they basically look like ugly Trackmaster versions, but worse, and they look really ugly. Plus, they all have the Thomas and Friends logo on them for some reason, which is really jarring, especially if you're trying to make recreations and stuff. And also, certain ones like that James Snowy Sentinel have snow decals and giant snow decals at that, and I'll just put onto the track as well as the engine, and that looks really sloppy too. And it's just awful. It looks horrible, and you can't use the track anywhere else. And the sets can be really, feeling incomplete or underwhelming. Like that James Snowy set I brought up earlier is very small. It's like the size of this seat here, if not, yeah, it's like about this size kind of, and it costs $60. That's ridiculous. You can, to quote G.W. Oliver again, you can make an entire wooden railway paradise with $60, but that's awful. Horrible pricing. And other things like, oh, and also Winston. So the tender engines get shrunk, and then Winston becomes overly long, as big as like Edward or something, which Edward and Henry and Toby are the three characters in the Steam team, which should not be a concept anymore. They're constantly pushed to the side, and everyone always acknowledges that, especially Edward and Henry. You know why. And they didn't even get wood models. Come on. Toby is literally a wooden engine. He's a wooden tram engine. You don't even make a wood item of him, but you make, what, Stanley, Rosie. Well, the Rosie doesn't look half bad, but with the unpainted part, it looks bad. And then almost released Flynn, and then Belle and Diesel 10, who hasn't made an appearance in years. But you don't make Toby, Edward, and Henry? That's just messed up. Also, certain track pieces are weirdly colored, like red and brown. Cranky looks pretty bad. What else? My throat is starting to hurt from my rage. Harold looks awful. Absolutely terrible. What else? Oh, and also, there was a Q&A sheet now released by Mattel that was put up in several places about, like, explain, like, why does Thomas Wood exist? What is the reason for certain changes, etc., etc. Travis Production made a video about it, and it's pretty funny. And yeah, this sheet is also awful. Like, oh, children and parents approved of these changes and stuff. From what everyone knows, every parent and every kid hated these changes. I remember reading comments from little kids saying, I hate these changes so much. I miss Old Wooden Railway. I wish I could show you an example of those comments, but, COPA. Screw COPA. And yeah, parents didn't approve of these, and it sold horribly. Like, and with Toys R Us closing, it sold even worse than that because you don't see wood items anywhere else. And also, Mattel thinks that the kids are stupid, and the reason that they show the exposed wood is to give kids the idea, oh, these have wood, like, bits on them. That means, okay, this is my wood item, so I grab that, and it's not Trackmaster. When I was a kid, I knew the difference. That's Wind Railway, that's Trackmaster, and that's Take Along. You don't need to make it seem like kids are stupid. And don't you dare for once bring up, it's just for kids! I like Number the North and the Emoji Movie and Made in Thailand. The it's just for kids argument, which I know a lot of people bring up and all because of how terrible it is. Not people who defend the argument, but people who don't. This argument sucks and all, and don't you dare ever use it on Thomas Wood because kids deserve so much better than this. I deserve better than this. Fans deserve better than this. And honestly, even repainting the engines only does so much. There's so many other problems that need to be fixed. And yeah, Thomas Wood was just a waste of time. It ended the most consistently good series of toys for Thomas and Friends, and it just made Mattel look even worse than before. You know who hates Thomas Wood? You know who likes Thomas Wood? Diantha, the Toyota Prius, all UTTP users, Copa, Albar Jabawi, I can't remember his name now, Osama bin Laden, Hitler, Pinkled Peach, Pink, Hitler, wait, did I already say Hitler? Oops. Taylor Swift, all Express cars, and all Fortnite characters, and JC5 Anti-Disney Yucket, and Nia and Rebecca, of course. They want Thomas Wood to stay the same as it was back then and all, and they want Thomas Wind Railway to die, but as we all know, everyone wants the opposite. You know who hates Thomas Wood? Or not Wind Railway, Thomas Wood? Me! Super Baddie 4, G.W. Oliver, Travis Productions, I can't remember the full name, I'm sorry. Willie, I can't remember, Diesel 199, Leo Kim Video, Rama Full, James A. Williams, The Unlucky Tug, and I forgot his name, the William Miller guy that I mentioned earlier. I'm sorry for keep forgetting your name. And basically every Thomas fan on the planet. And lots of other people, as well as every kid and parent. Wait, well, some of them are Thomas fans anyway, but still. We all wish that Thomas Wind Railway comes back and Thomas Wood gets discontinued. Also, Thomas Wood, it's like calling Trackmaster Thomas Electric. What a bad name. And honestly, it kind of fits this terrible series. Well, toy line. End of rant.